this is the heart of Toronto. This street is the busiest intersection in Canada. 42 million people walk north and south on Yonge Street on an annual basis. The Eaton Centre gets easily over 52 million people in its doors on an annual basis. So when you look at the intersection, you see it packed. There's lots of people, lots of things happening. But at this time of year, we're on a public space and it's basically not being used. And it should be some sort of activation for this time of season. There should be some more seasonality to what happens on this square and this public space to make a better connection for what's happening on Canada's busiest street. And again, sometimes when we look at Toronto, we got to start looking at the seasonality of space. And yeah, there should be more activation on this space. There's nothing on this square right now. This should be a Chris Kindle market, similar that's done down in the Distillery District, right? Those German heritage type events are great for this neighborhood. But think of offering that up through the entire season for different cultural aspects of Toronto. We have to find, I think the Edmonton model is probably the best thing. They declared themselves a winter city and they program their city all year round. And I think we have to admit that we've got a winter season and we've got to do something with it.
A four-season city. Is Yonge Street ready for Saks? Is this, and the flip side of that is how will that impact the property values and squeeze out some of the cultural icons that are in this neighborhood?
And that's a great question because I think we're seeing Toronto's retail experience evolve very quickly, not only on Yonge Street, but what you see in some of those managed experience in some of the malls. We're becoming obviously more competitive. So as the retail evolution happens on Yonge Street, then you're going to see the on-street change as well. So what was in the Toronto Eaton Centre, you're going to see some of those brands come back on street. Or some of those brands that are going to be moving from the Eaton Centre, you'll see them come on street. And you'll see that change because Yonge Street's changing a lot. The retail experience back in the day, most of those windows that you see on the 3rd, 4th, 5th floors were all storage rooms. They used the natural light for storage rooms. You know, growing up in this area and Yonge Street being part of my past in the 70s and 80s, but the Eaton's family had acquired a bunch of different standalone properties back in the day and wanted to build this larger entity called the Toronto Eaton Centre. Most of this block is heritage designated buildings, but you saw a building owner that basically didn't want to strap another 20 stories on top of a heritage building. He basically gutted the interior, brought it back to bricks and beam, and has moved, incubation startup companies into those floors, because that's what the new cluster is about. The new employment cluster is not just about an insurance company moving in, it's about startup businesses, it's accessibility, it's right on a transportation line. What you would love to see as part of this is one half of the store become a cafe, a restaurant, the other side still remaining retail, and with Yonge Street revitalization, expand the pedestrian experience, take in a car lane or two, and then have patio space out here to really animate the street and provide more linger time for retailers. You need a balance. You got to have the large chains to be able to draw people to, but also you need the small independent to keep the character of the neighborhood. So as you look at this portion of Yonge Street from Shooter north to Dundas Square, when you come into the sign district, you see the heritage that's along this facade on Yonge Street, and you see, when you get to the Money Mart here and you look at that wonderful 2nd story, 3rd story, and 4th story that's currently vacant, but when you see that tower behind that shows you the redevelopment that's happening in that neighborhood. Our neighborhood is expected to grow 45% between 2009 to 2024. Which is significant. That's well over another 75,000 to 100,000 people moving into this neighborhood. You and I could put $1 million in that, but what are we going to have to charge people to make that $1 million back? That's the plight of the neighborhood with a lot of these heritage buildings. One of the bylaws that protects the Zanzibar is you can't transfer the license for the strip club
To
anywhere in Toronto. They won't allow you to transfer it. So that's why all the strip clubs are in certain locations. So they can't come into downtown, or you can't get another strip license
So
in
you
Toronto.
have a space, you keep it. You do not sell that and think you're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
right?
that's the policy that the city, you couldn't apply for a new permit, nor could you transfer the permit. As Ryerson continues to grow, then how do we make the campus more permeable? How do we maintain better access? How do because I'm not usually on campus, because I'm usually late for appointments, so I got to run across the streets or through the campus to get to various appointments. But you see with the Student Learning Center is great architecture on Yonge Street. It really has changed sort of the vibe and the feel. You see the student population based on class changes and how that all evolves. You see the foot traffic it creates. Then to provide some retail experience at grade, then makes that connection. What you'd love to see is beside that building, a little more access to the laneways. So if there was an opportunity to open these buildings up and provide a little more access into the existing buildings, then you've got a little more connectivity. Well, all this section from basically Zanzibar has been purchased, and that's going to be one of the towers, or there's supposed to be 2 towers on that corner that are going to be redeveloped all the way up. From Wanda's all the way to the top of the street.
Okay, but Zanzibar stays.
Aiden Camera has been long standing in this neighborhood, and then you see those kitschy stores that were always on Yonge Street that sort of traded everything, right? They've got a mishmash of shoes, Doc Martens, as you say. They've got
Some bongs.
a variety of things that would encompass the Yonge Street experience. But there is future plans to redevelop this and put more residential on top of it. We're at the corner of Yonge and Gerrard. Heritage buildings across the street, but I think Aura was the big catalyst. This used to be a parking lot ever since I was a kid. And then finally seeing the density that's got on this corner, you're seeing a lot of retail at grade. Some good things and some challenging things with this patch. But what that has inspired is all the other redevelopment that's going to happen on this corner. On the south corner, that heritage building, there's going to be a tower. So all the way down to Zanzibar is going to be redeveloped.
Are we going to lose Evergreen?
Yes. It's moving to Spadina,
Okay.
into Chinatown. Where does retail go through redevelopment? And there's iconic venues, and we'd like to see obviously a little more work to understand the retail contributions that they made to the neighborhood, and then how do you maintain those? If we're already at 42 million people a year walking north and south on Yonge Street, then what was the right number to say the pedestrian experience should have changed years ago? So instead, we're going to force that issue now, so all the catch basins have to be moved. All these things have to be moved now to be able to accommodate this growth. We need better pedestrian experience, more patio space, more green space, improved TTC stations. We should all be able to live within 5 blocks of where we live. And if you have to go any further,
Yeah, unless all of your shopping,
shopping,
is
dry
high-end
goods, all those types
stuff
of things.
at Saks, right?
Right.
Other than that, we got to get in a car right now to go to a grocery store, don't we?
Right. Well, it's a walk, but there's one close by, but that's exactly the conversation.